He didn't start out angry. He was calm, patient, respectful, and completely ignored. So his brain learned something dangerous. If calm doesn't work, anger will. Welcome to Female Nature Revealed, where we uncover the hidden psychological dynamics that silently shape our most intimate relationships and behaviors. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. He used to speak so softly, explaining his feelings with a calm demeanor, hoping that his words would finally reach her heart. He tried to explain things logically and calmly, but nobody was truly listening to the quiet whispers of his gentle soul. Now that he is shouting and angry, everyone looks at him with fear and says that he has changed into a monster. They wonder where the nice guy went, seeing only the rage on the surface without understanding the history beneath the noise. But what if that anger is not his true personality, but rather the calculated result of a deep psychological learning process? To understand this transformation, we must look at the principles of behavioral psychology, specifically the conditioning theories of B.F. Skinner. Skinner proved that living creatures will repeat behaviors that produce results, while abandoning behaviors that yield no response or reward. When he was calm, he was invisible. His patience resulted in zero feedback, teaching his brain that calmness does not work. His brain recorded the data. Patience leads to being ignored, and kindness leads to being overlooked in the hierarchy of attention. But the moment he raised his voice in frustration, he immediately received the attention and compliance he had been starving for. His subconscious mind learned a powerful lesson. Anger is effective. Anger gets immediate results where patience and kindness failed completely. This is not about justifying bad behavior, but understanding the raw mechanics of how the human brain reinforces specific emotional reactions. If being calm results in silence, but being angry results in a conversation, the brain will naturally gravitate towards the anger. He attempts to revert to his gentle nature, but the environment reinforces the old pattern by ignoring his soft-spoken attempts. Once again, shouting achieves the goal. The behavior is reinforced, cementing the neural pathway that links aggression to conflict resolution. It becomes a subconscious reflex. He does not want to be angry, but his environment has trained him to be loud. The fundamental law of psychology remains true for everyone. Behavior that works gets repeated, regardless of whether it is healthy. Now that the foundation is laid, we must examine the slow and painful climb that leads to the final explosion. This brings us to the escalation algorithm. Anger is rarely the starting point. It is the final destination of a journey. It starts with a gentle reminder, a polite request made with respect, assuming that his partner cares enough to listen. When that reminder is ignored, he assumes it was an accident. He suppresses his annoyance and decides to ask again later. The second request is firmer. He is still in control, but the lack of response is starting to create internal friction. Biologically, his body begins to react. Cortisol levels start to creep up as the brain detects a lack of cooperation. By the third time he is ignored, the feeling shifts from annoyance to a sense of disrespect and emotional invalidation. The brain switches modes. It moves from a desire to connect and cooperate into a defensive fight or flight state. Frustration is not just anger. It is the feeling of helplessness when your actions do not produce the expected outcome. He is containing this energy, holding it back to be a good man. But the pressure inside is building without release. The final trigger occurs when he realizes that his calm words are not just unheard, they are being actively blocked out. The explosion happens. It is loud, it is scary, and it is the only tool he has left to break the silence. Silence falls. He has finally captured her attention, but the cost of this victory is the safety of the relationship. He did not want to be this person. This anger is the endpoint of a long sequence of being repeatedly ignored. We must understand that the anger did not appear out of nowhere. It was manufactured by the failure of the earlier steps. This cycle destroys the man's self-image, leading us to the next tragic phase, the complete breakdown of mutual respect. When calm words carry no weight, the fundamental structure of respect in the relationship begins to crumble and fall apart. The man starts to feel that he has lost his influence. He feels like a passenger in his own relationship. When a man has to scream to be heard, he loses dignity. But when he whispers and is ignored, he loses self-worth. The dynamic shifts. The partner only sees the aggression at the end, missing the desperation that fueled the fire. A vicious cycle forms. He is ignored, so he gets angry. She loses respect because he is angry, so she ignores him more. He is trapped. If he stays calm, he is a doormat. If he gets angry, he is a villain. This is the punchline of his tragedy. When calm words carry no weight, anger becomes the absolute last resort for survival. This is not about saying the woman is wrong. It is about recognizing that the dynamic has become dangerously unbalanced. He begins to dislike himself. He hates the person he has to become just to get basic needs met. As respect dies, he stands at a crossroads, facing three distinct paths that will determine his future and his fate. There are only three ways this story continues. Each path leads to a completely different outcome for the man's soul. Path 1 is continuous escalation. Anger becomes his default language. He forgets how to be soft, and his personality permanently hardens. He becomes a bitter man, fighting the world because he feels he must fight to receive even an ounce of respect. Path 2 is to collapse inward. This is what Martin Seligman called learned helplessness. He simply stops trying to communicate. On the outside, he is quiet and compliant. On the inside, he is dead, harboring a deep, rotting resentment. Path 3 is the strategic exit. He realizes that staying requires him to become a monster, so he chooses to leave. He leaves not to punish her, but to save himself. He refuses to participate in a dynamic that destroys his character. Most men drift between the first two paths, unaware that they are slowly losing themselves in the process of reaction. But before we reach the end, we must understand the mechanics of repair through the concept of emotional bids. Dr. John Gottman describes relationships as a constant exchange of emotional bids, small signals requesting connection, attention, or validation. When he says, "I feel ignored," or "please listen," he is making a bid. He is asking for emotional connection. When these small bids are consistently turned away or ignored, the bridge of connection between the two people begins to rot. Anger is often just a massive, desperate emotional bid. It is a loud attempt to break through the wall of indifference. He tries to smash the wall with rage, but this only frightens his partner and adds more bricks to the barrier. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. It reveals that the shouting is actually a distorted cry for the connection he lost. So, how do we break this cycle? We must address both sides of the equation with brutal honesty and clarity. Here is the solution. A message for the men who feel ignored and for the women who feel afraid of the anger. To the men, you must set boundaries early. Do not wait until you are ready to explode before you speak up. If your calm words are ignored, remove your attention. Walk away. Teach people that your presence is a privilege, not a right. Remember this rule. If you have to become someone you dislike just to be heard, then you are in the wrong environment. To the women, if you value a gentleman, you must reward his gentleness. Listen to him when he whispers. Do not teach his brain that anger is the only thing that works. Reinforce the calm connection before the escalation begins. Relationships are built on these small moments of response. Catch the bid before it drops. Fix the leak before the flood. We must conclude with a hard truth. No one starts a relationship wanting to shout. Shouting is what happens when silence fails. But you always have a choice. You can choose to protect your own character, even if it means losing the relationship. It is better to be alone and retain your dignity than to be in a relationship that turns you into a monster. Protect your peace, protect your nature, and never let the indifference of others twist you into something you are not. If you recognized yourself in this story, know that you have the power to change the dynamic, starting today. If you want the next part on exactly how to build a respectful dynamic before escalation happens, comment the word boundaries. Thank you for watching. We are dedicated to revealing the truth about human nature, one story at a time. This is Female Nature Revealed. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more psychological insights. Signing off.